Hello everyone, this is Daniel from Cast98, and in this video I'm going to finish showing you how to make a rehearsal schedule using Google Sheets. So let's dive right in. If you didn't watch the previous video, let me catch you up. This is a snapshot of the kind of rehearsal schedule template that we are working towards. This is not really a rehearsal schedule, but this is just showing you everybody's conflicts, and we'll move into actually creating the rehearsal schedule in the next video. So right now we're just trying to curate all the information we collected from the audition form and put that into a usable format, because if I click over to this other tab, we got a lot of information from our audition form, but it's not very easy to look at. Definitely not very easy to start building a schedule from. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to take this information and convert it into this. Okay, so I'm going to close that tab and go to what we were working with just a moment ago. This is a sample audition form that we created in the previous video. If you have any questions about how we got to this point, I started from scratch in that video, so please go check it out in the comments below or in the description below. Okay, so here we have our information, and in the last video we already created our contact sheet. We didn't make it very pretty, but we made it nonetheless. And so now we want to start moving this into a usable format for comparing conflicts and finding good days to put dates on the calendar. So right offhand, at this point you have probably, maybe not. I will not make the assumption that you've already finished your auditions and that you've already cast your show, because in my theory, if you can start working on this sooner rather than later, it saves you some time if you don't have to do it in a linear format. So what I mean by that is, if you have auditions coming up in 2 weeks, but you're working on setting up the audition form, you might get into a groove and want to go ahead and set up your template right now, instead of waiting on auditions to happen, and then you cast your show, and then you have to come back to Google Sheets and kind of relearn what you started. So I'm going to do this in such a way that I think you'll be able to set it all up at one time and be done with it, and you can come back to it later when you need to start making the schedule, and it's going to work really well for you. So that's kind of my mindset, and hopefully that works for you. If not, I'll make another video. Just let me know in the comments. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to create a new sheet down at the bottom. I'm going to drag it just because I want to keep everything organized. I'm going to name the sheet by double clicking. I'm going to call it conflicts. And okay, like we showed in the last video, how we got this information is through the use of these little simple formulas, where we essentially are just creating a smart link from our data sheet over to this sheet. And so for starters, we want to do basically the same thing over here. So I'm going to, this time I'm going to start in the A2 column. Actually, no, I won't do that. I'll start in A1 because that's always a good place to start. I'm going to do equals, so that's going to start our formula. And again, if you're in a beginner mode, or maybe this is the first time you're using Google Sheets, you'll probably have a dialog pop up explaining some basic formula tips to you. You can read that if you want or not. I don't have that, so you didn't see it pop up here. But equals means that I can now go to another sheet and click on a piece of data to pull that into my current sheet. So what I want is to start making a list of all the dates that I have in my conflict area. So again, to kind of catch you up, if you're just joining, let me hit escape so I can clear that out and show this to you. I'm going to go back to the data sheet. We went through 3 options in the previous video for how to collect conflicts. One is just a simple paragraph, which is denoted by this column E. And then we have 6 columns here for option number 2, which is a checkbox grid. But what I'm using in this video is all of these columns here, which is a series of multiple choice questions where each question represents a day. And the auditionees select what their conflicts are on that day, and they submit it so that this information comes in like this. So this is what I'm going to be working from, and so what I want is to capture all this information and put it into my conflicts sheet. So let me come back over here again. and I'm going to do equals, flip back over to the data, and I'm going to select that first column, which you can't see right here, L1, which is Thursday, October 1st. You could also type this in. And so you see how it says equals data exclamation point L1. You could type that in and it would be the same thing. But this makes it easy. I can just come over here and click on it, and there it is. So I'm going to press enter, and that's going to save that input so that now I have Thursday, October 1st right here. So in the last video, I showed that you can copy and paste this into multiple cells, and it's going to kind of follow that smart link. And so you can do that this way to get all of those dates if you want. If I copy and paste all of this, you see it gives us the dates that we want. But this is going to be kind of harder to work with because we've got the dates in a column format. And I don't know about you, but I typically think of a calendar. If you have Google Calendar on your phone or something, you can look at it in a monthly view. And so this might be helpful. But we're not working in a monthly view on this, and you'll see why in a minute. But one of the options that they have is a summary view or an agenda view. And when you're in that, the timeline runs from top to bottom. This is the same on Facebook. If you use the Facebook timeline, it runs from top to bottom, or bottom to top, I guess, on Facebook. And so it's for me, it's typically more easier to think about the information in that way. So how do we get this information into a single column instead of running across the page horizontally? I'll show you. So there's a formula in Google Sheets called transpose, and it does exactly what we are trying to do. It takes a collection of cells, or a row, and it turns it into a column, or it takes a column and turns it into a row. Or if we select a big block of text, it's going to just rotate it so that all the rows become columns and all the columns become rows. So we want to transpose this list of dates right here. So I can either use it here because I've already put it on this sheet, or what I'm actually going to do is click back over to my data sheet now that I've got my formula open, and I'm going to select that first Thursday, October 1st cell. I'm going to hold down Shift and use my right arrow key to come all the way over to my last date. And I only did 10 days in this sample audition form, but of course, if you're running with a 12-week production cycle, you would select all those dates all the way across. So once you've selected all those dates, just that single column, press enter. Okay, and voila, there are our dates. Now, you could even take this a step further if you want. I'm gonna just overwrite this data, and you see that put our dates in a nice vertical format. But if we do this again, I'm gonna use the same formula, transpose, open it with a question, not a question mark, a parenthesis. So that's the formula syntax in Google Sheets, and you can either type it in just as you see me typing it, or I'll probably provide a template for this after the video if you check the video notes. So transpose, open parentheses. I'm going to come back to my data sheet, scroll back over to that first October 1 cell. Really hard to manage it because all the data is so wide and crazy. And I'm going to click all the way over again. And now if you really want to be an overachiever, you can also hold down Shift and use the down arrow and select all of your data. And so if you have a lot of auditionees, you might scroll for a long time, or you can hold down Shift and Control and use the down arrow, and that's going to take you all the way to the bottom of your spreadsheet. Okay, so it looks like we're doing a lot here, and we kind of are. But if I press enter, you see it now has pulled all of that conflict information, and it's, well, you can't really see it because we don't have any labels on it right now. But let me remove this top area so that you can see it a little bit better. So you see we've got our dates here on the left, October 1, October 2, October 3, etc. And then what we have here are all the conflicts, and they have been flipped like I described. All the rows became columns, all the columns became rows. So now what we need is a header for our columns telling us who this information belongs to. So, this person has an all-day conflict on October 1st and then a 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. conflict on October 3rd. But we don't know who this person is. So how can we get those names over here? Well, we do it the same way. So I'm going to do equals transpose. Well, before I do that, let me show you what we're going to grab. If I come back over to the data, scroll all the way to the top left, you see here is our name column, except now we don't want these names in a column, we want these names in a row. So we need to use transpose again. So I'm going to go back to conflicts. I'm going to start with this first area right above the first anonymous person, right? And I'm going to do equals transpose, open parentheses, and now I'm going to click over to data. And because I am already on the first anonymous person, I need to select the first person in our data, in our audition form. So that's Daniel Fowler right here at the top. Okay, and so now I need one single row going across. So that means I need to take this entire column to turn it into a row with this transpose formula. Okay, so I've selected the entire column, use enter, and now you see Daniel Fowler, Alyssa Fowler, Harry Potter, etc. And just to verify that this has done things correctly, you see Daniel Fowler says he has a conflict on October 1st all day and October 3rd, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. If I go to my data, go all the way to the top left, Daniel Fowler, scroll all the way over, says October 1st all day, October 3rd, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. So we know that that is his conflicts, and we can assume that the rest is correct. So right away, I'm going to go ahead and show you something I do. I like to hide columns that I'm not using. And so here in the data tab, I'm going to select some of these columns. Again, I select the column by clicking on the letter at the top. I hold down the shift key and I move to the right with the right arrow. And all these columns that I'm not using because they're examples for other things, I'm going to right click and select hide columns. And what that does is it looks like it gets rid of them, but it doesn't. It's still there, as you see by these little arrows right here. If I click these, they're going to come back, but it just hides them visually, which makes things a lot easier for me to look at. Okay, so now we can continue on to the next bit. And the next thing I'm going to do for my own sanity is make this look a little better. I'm going to change the fonts and just provide some spacing here so that I know that this is what we're working with instead of the nasty default setting. So I can select all by selecting the cell in the top left. And then I can change the font by using the font selector. You're probably familiar with this in some other editing programs, so I won't spend a lot of detail here. But I can widen and shorten a row or column, resize them by dragging the little line in between two columns. Very easy to do. Also, if you want it to get just edgy right there on October 7th, you can just double click it, which is really helpful. So if you have a really big one, double click it, and it's going to resize itself to fit the longest piece of text in that cell. So that's really handy. Another thing you can do is in the right next to the top left cell, which I would click to select everything, but I'm not doing that this time. If you look at the bold lines on the just below and to the right of that top left cell, your cursor turns into a little hand. So if you click and hold and drag that, what you're doing is called freezing a row. And if you have more auditionees than me, this is really handy because now when I scroll across, my dates don't move. I still see them. So if I undo that, and now I scroll across, you see I lose my dates. And so if I'm looking at 40 or 60 auditionees or cast members, then it's really nice to actually freeze things. And by that same token, these headers that I now have for the actor names, if we have 12 months of information here, you see now I don't know who's who. So if we go back to the top, all the way to the top, and if I want to freeze that top row, I can just drag that bold line as well. So now we've got a frozen row on the top, so I can always see those actor names, and we've got a frozen row on the left so that I can always see the date that I'm working on, okay? So I'm going to select this column, and I'm going to choose to bold it. I'm going to select this column. I'm going to choose to bold that as well. just to make things look a bit nicer around here. And the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select all with my columns here, and I'm going to just drag one of these rows to be a little bit bigger. Okay, just a little bit bigger, not much bigger at all, and that just creates a lot of space. And now you see all the text is sitting on the bottom. That drives me a little crazy. And so I can choose this icon here, this vertical alignment icon, and that lets you position the text in all of your cells. I'm going to choose the middle one. Okay, so now we have some nice looking data. It's looking a lot better. I can do some more stuff, but I'm not going to cover that in this video. But I like to make sure that my spreadsheets look as nice as possible so that the information is more fun to work with. Yeah, that's pretty good. So what I want to do now is I want to be able to see which days are the best days to put on the schedule to schedule a new rehearsal at a glance. So I need to be able to see that at a glance. And this is still, especially if I had 40 cast members, this is still kind of difficult to look at because we've got these words, a lot of these table cells, they are overflowing, and so they get chopped off. And this cell is running over into these other cells. So let me do one more formatting thing. I'm going to select all again, and I'm going to select this text wrapping icon right next to where we were before, and I'm going to choose to clip that so that we only see the little bit of the bit of text that is in the row and the column where it should be. No text is overrunning. Okay, so now I want to work on making this digestible at a glance. So I'm going to add some extra columns, and what these are going to be are essentially some summary columns. So I'm going to count how many conflicts there are on each day and show the number of conflicts in these columns. But you see, when I added this new column, everything kind of shifted in a weird way. And that's because we still have these smart links plugged in. And so it shifted everything that I had in that smart link over to just change up things. So what I'm going to do is undo a bit. I'm going to undo that one thing, Control Z. You can also do Edit, Undo. And I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. So I'm going to come back into this A2 column where I put this transpose formula in place. And I'm going to undo what I did before, where I made it the entire, let's call it a matrix of information. So instead of having all of the cells, all of the rows and the columns as one entire grid transposed, I'm going to just do this in pieces. So I'm going to do one transpose formula for my dates, and then I'll do a separate transpose formula for all of the actor conflicts. Okay, so we'll kind of put these different pieces of data in different containers, if you want to think about it like that, like different buckets. We have a bucket for our conflicts, a bucket for our actor names, and a bucket for our dates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit select that cell. I'm going to hit Enter Transpose, just like we did before. And I'm going to you could also select it, and it adds the parentheses for you, which is really, really handy. So I'm going to go to the data, and I'm going to select Thursday, October 1, hold down Shift, and use my right arrow to go all the way across, just like we did before. Press Enter, and now you see all my actor conflicts are gone. Do not be afraid. We're about to fix that right now. So now I'm going to do Transpose right here, and I'm going to select it again from the drop down. It opens up the parentheses, go back into my data, and I'm looking for Daniel's conflicts on October 1st. So if I scroll over, we have October 1st, Daniel is the first one, and again, I need all of this data. And if you hold down Control and Shift, you can jump a lot of cells all at once. That's pretty handy. And so I can just do all of basically my entire spreadsheet except for the dates along the top. So I'm going to press Enter once I've selected all that. And voila, just in about 60 seconds, I've gotten all of my information back. And now, the reason I did that is because now I can insert a new column, and you see it didn't shift everything over. So that's just really, really handy. Because this is a summary column, it's only going to contain a number, so I'm going to make it really small, and I'm going to make a couple more of these You'll see why in just a sec. So when we collected conflicts, we collected 3 types of conflicts, or you can think about it as 3 different categories of conflicts. We gave our actors the ability to select an all-day conflict, which you see here in all of these cells where it says all day. We gave them the ability to leave an other conflict, which is like a partial day conflict if we had our instructions in place, where they would tell us about their partial day conflict. And so that's these cells where there's other text, but it doesn't say all day. Okay, and then the third option is that they just left it blank because they don't have a conflict. So 3 different types of conflicts. So I'm going to create 3 columns to represent a counter for each of those types of conflicts. So I'm going to create these. I'm going to say X, question mark, and circle, or capital O. And that's how I'm going to denote these different types of conflicts. I'm also going to go ahead and select these columns and justify those to the center because I like things to look nice and neat. Okay, so now we need a formula that's going to enable us to count how many conflicts of each type exist in our data for each day. So this is really easy to do. I'm going to do equals. And in Google Sheets, there is a COUNTIF formula. So there's also a count formula, which is good for counting numbers and counting cells that contain data, any data, but we don't want to count everything. We only want to count if this person has a, or we only want to count the number of conflicts that match what we want it to match. So with this formula, we enter 2, these are called parameters. And so the first is we select what range we want to check for. So because we're doing, let me escape this real quick so I can show you. We are doing this counter for all of October 1st. So basically this entire row. And we want only the actor conflicts. So let me freeze all these cells as well, so that now if we scroll over, we still have those counters. Super handy. So we only want Daniel through Daniel B down here to count. So let me do this again. Count if our range, I'm just going to use my arrow keys here. Our range is going, if I go over a few times over to E2, now I'm going to hold shift and I'm just going to hold down the right arrow and select the entire rest of the row. So it goes all the way over to AC2. I'm going to press enter. And it's like, what are you talking about? Wrong number of arguments. That's because I didn't put that second thing. But when you press enter, it tries to save the formula already. So if I go back to the top left, I'm going to use this formula, go back inside of it. Man, this is really technical, so I apologize. But so the first range, once we have that selected, you can do a comma. And now we need to tell it what criteria we want to match and count. And so since we know that the response to our all-day question, do you have an all-day conflict, is that the cell is simply the text all day, all I have to do is do in quotation marks the words all day. And I think it's case sensitive. It is not case sensitive, so you could do all caps if you want. And so now what this formula is saying, count in this entire row, count how many boxes say all day. And if I press enter, you see there are only 2 of those. And if I look across, you see that's very easy to tell. There are only 2 all days. Okay? So we're going to use the same formula for all 3 of these columns. Okay? But we're going to have different matching criteria for each one. Okay? So let's do this next one. I'm going to do equals count if. And what we want to check this time is to see if there is any text whatsoever in a cell. Okay, because if they mark a partial conflict, it might say anything. We can't predict what it says. Everybody says it differently, but we want to check any text in the cell. And that's not exactly right if you're getting a little bit ahead of me, but I'll fix it in just a sec. So we're going to count if, same range as before, so E2 all the way over to AC2. Hold shift and use your right arrow to do that really easily. And then comma. And now we enter what text we want, which is anything. We want it to be any text whatsoever. and you can denote that with an asterisk. So what I'm actually typing here is COUNTIF, the entire row, select the entire row, and then comma, and quotation mark, asterisk, quotation mark. Close your parentheses, press enter, and you see it gave us the same count. And that's because for October 1st, the two cells that do contain text also say all day. So it is correct that our all day matcher and our any text whatsoever matcher are the same thing. That makes sense. That is correct. So for this third one, this is our counter for how many people are available this day. They didn't mark any conflict whatsoever. So I'm going to do equals COUNTIF, that same range as before, using my right arrow, hold down shift, and just hold down the arrow all the way across, comma, and this time I want it to count any cells that are blank. Okay, so quotation, quotation, nothing in there, close parentheses, enter. 23 times it is totally blank. Now I will pause here to inform you. Hopefully your intuition's kind of clicking here if you're a little bit tech savvy. Where obviously I don't have 23 people auditioning for my show, so to say that 23 people are available on October 1st is incorrect. So this is where you would want to, this is where if you had the none option selected on your multiple choice questions, that would come in handy. We could do a matcher for that word none and count those, or just delete any extra columns that you have if you are beyond auditions. I think that we can, if we remove a column, I don't think it's going to, oh, it will. Okay, cool. So you cannot remove, oh, that's actually great news. So because we used the transpose formula earlier, you cannot delete any columns that do not exist in your other spreadsheet. So we have all these columns here because our transposed data from our, man, I'm getting really technical here and I apologize trying to explain this to you. It's really not important, I guess, ultimately. But now you see, because we deleted all those extra columns, that our availability counter is showing the correct number 5. And if I count those by hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's actually 6 there, aren't there? So, oh, it's because I deleted this column and now it's back. So yeah, so our formula adjusted itself because I deleted that extra column earlier just a minute ago, and you saw that transposed fixed itself, but the formula did not fix itself. So I actually, and I'm sorry about this, but I do need to correct these formulas now again. So, and I'm going to change this K to AC, or you know what, I'm just going to go to M. That's a little bit easier since we see M over there, and I'm going to delete all these extra columns. Okay, and then in this formula, I'll do the same thing, change that K to an M, and change this K to an M. So hopefully you just didn't do this to your spreadsheet, you're watching the video, and you didn't do that to your own, so you don't have to fix that formula, no problem. I just did that as a little experiment to show you that you can break things if you start deleting stuff later on, but if you get this all set up at the beginning, you shouldn't have to delete anything. You'll be good to go from the very beginning. So now we have a reasonable checker. We still have an extra column over here. I guess I could go ahead and delete that just to make sure that we have exactly the right counter over here. Okay, so we still need to make sure that we fix this too, because this is not any partial conflicts. This is right now the same thing as our all day conflict. So what I can very simply do is double click into the cell to start editing the formula again. But because we don't need to edit the formula itself, we just need to do minus with a hyphen and then select the cell right next to this one, minus the all day conflicts. Press enter, and now we have the correct counter. So what I just did is I put in a little bit of math with the counter. So what this formula is now doing, it's counting all of the cells to the right that contain any text, and then we're subtracting out the number of all-day conflicts to get the number of partial conflicts. Okay? Hopefully you understand that. we had, again, 3 options that the person could, that each actor could put in the audition form. They could select all day, they could leave it completely blank, or they could enter their own text and explain a partial day conflict. And so now we are correctly calculating all 3 of those, but only for October 1st. So let's do this for all the rest of the days. If we highlight all 3, you can grab this little plus sign, or this little plus sign, no, this little square box, and drag this all the way down to the bottom, or you can Control C to copy these cells, and now hold Shift and the down arrow to select all of your days in your calendar, and Control V to paste. And you see the magic of the formula there. It's already counting all the conflicts that are existing. So that's really, really cool. If we have 12 weeks of conflicts to work with, now we have a really nice little indicator to show us at a glance when are the best days to put a rehearsal on the schedule. Now I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to select these 2 conflict days. I'm going to right click and go down to conditional formatting, and I'm going to apply a color to this. So apply to range, I'm not going to change that because I've already selected the 2 columns that I want to apply this to. Format cells if the text is less than or equal to, either one works. If it's equal to 0, I want to highlight those in green. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll down and click done, and you see it's already done it over here. Click on the X, and voila, now we can see really at a glance, thanks to the color coding, how the days that are really, really good. Now I could take this even a step further and highlight those same 2 columns, do the same thing, go down to conditional formatting, select this same thing, and I'm gonna, if I add another rule straight from here, it's gonna be the same thing, except this time instead of equal to 0, if I say equal to 1, it's also going to highlight that in green. And we can distinguish the 2, go back to 0, make it a little bit darker green, maybe that shade, and turn that text yellow or white or something, so that we can distinguish, like, the dark green stuff is the really good day to schedule a rehearsal. The green stuff is the pretty good day. I will tell you that something we are coming across at this point that it's just something you'll need to deal with, I guess, is what we cannot do with Google Sheets is break this down by character or by group, rehearsal group. So this is where Cast98 can help you. If you haven't used Cast98, go to cast98.com. We have a demo on there, and we give you an online audition form, and we automatically do all of this for you. We do not give you a spreadsheet to work with. We do all of this for you behind the scenes, and you can jump immediately from having your audition form set up and going through auditions, immediately transition into scheduling rehearsals without having to do any of this administrative work. But I wanted to make these videos so that anyone that wanted a free option, since Cast98 is a paid option, if anyone wants to do this on your own for free and to work more efficiently, that is still something that I'm very passionate about. And so I'm trying to help you work more efficiently. But just know that you can escape all the pain of this by going and using Cast98 for your audition and rehearsal scheduling needs. So that's my shameless plug. But back to what I was saying is you cannot break this down by characters or groups. That is to say, these counters only show the folks who are listed here, which is all of our auditionees currently. If you want to do a cast list only, I can help you with that. So if we insert a row above row 1, and I do that just by right-clicking on the number 1 over here and select Insert 1 row above, and now we could do characters, colon, and if these folks are on the cast, I can actually start putting their character names above them. So maybe Daniel is Gaston, Alyssa is Belle, Harry or Voldemort. Voldemort should be Gaston, and Daniel is going to be the Beast. So you can start putting the characters here, and because this row is frozen, it's going to show up as you scroll down. So that helps you a little bit in identifying different characters that you want for different kinds of rehearsals. But for the most part, we will not be able to break this down any further. On Cast 98, we have what we call rehearsal groups, where you can assign each character to various groups that you've set up. And when you do that and you're scheduling rehearsals, if you have 24 people in a dance ensemble, you can just select that group and you will only see the conflicts related to that dance ensemble. So scheduling rehearsals for that dance ensemble becomes very, very easy versus here in Google Sheets, if you have 40 cast members and only half of them are in that dance ensemble, you're having to look past the other half of your cast members to try and drill down to conflicts. So I hope you understand all that. I know I'm probably rambling at this point because it's been a long video. My brain is mush, but that is pretty much the end of this video. We now have our conflicts ready to go to start building the rehearsal schedule. And in the next video, I'm going to take you through how to set up a really nice, easy to use schedule template. So stay tuned for that video. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And again, go to cast98.com/demo if you want to try out our audition form. We have a director's demo where you're able to actually become a director of a fake show, Avengers the Musical, and you're able to play around with the cast list, play around with the audition form, and play around with the rehearsal schedule maker. So very hands-on there. So if you have any interest in that, cast98.com/demo to start exploring that. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.